Okay. Good morning, everybody. It's the morning here on the West Coast, and we are so happy to be here with you this morning. So from wherever you are joining us from, welcome. We hope you are warm and comfortable. My name is Nicole Ryle, and I'm the Director of Development and Public Programs here at CIHS Enlighten. The Enlighten division of CIHS is our public programs division, where we offer continuing education, public workshops and webinars like the one here today, and certificate programs. So if you're new to CIHS, a big warm welcome from myself. Thank you so much for being here. We hope to stay in touch. We've got a lot of exciting events coming up in 2023. One of them is starting next week with our very own Michelle Veneziano, who you guys will all get to experience today. She will be leading us through a 13-week course with CME and CE credit for doctors, nurses, psychologists, nurse practitioners, and wellness professionals. And so we are very excited to welcome her back for this special webinar today. We will have a chance to talk a little bit more about Michelle's upcoming course, but what she's going to be sharing with you today about the breath is a huge part of her upcoming course. And so we wanted to give you just a little taste of it and experience her very flow state teaching. So if you don't know osteopathic Dr. Michelle Veneziano, she's a physician, adjunct clinical professor at Touro University and research faculty here at the California Institute for Human Science. She has been a student of Continuum Practice, yoga, Buddhism, Tai Chi, and Tantric practices for many years. Her approach to osteopathic medicine is rooted in cranial osteopathy, which is a hands-on, evidence-based therapeutic practice that sources both Western and Eastern philosophies to support the body's ability to heal itself. How cool is that? Through studies in both environmental design and traditional osteopathic medicine, she has come to appreciate the true balance and vitality that are accessed through alignment with the natural world. Such a great bio. Love that, Michelle. And then Robert Litman will be joining us as well to guide us through a full body breathing experience. Both Michelle and Robert are inspired by osteopathy, continuum practice, and Buteyko breathing practices. For the past 30 years, Robert has guided students on the use of movement, breath, and sound as a tool for restoring healthy breathing rhythms and structural alignment. He spent 5 years teaching with Andrew Weil, the doctor at the Integrative Medicine residency program at the University of Arizona, and he's co-taught with Emily Conrad, who's the founder of Continuum Movement, for 18 years. In 2003, he founded the Breathable Body to educate people about the breath and to support those with breathing difficulties. So just a side note, before we dive into this really hands-on class and practice, we will have time for Q&A after our collective experience. And so if you can just set your questions aside for now and really just get yourself settled to experience this breath class that Michelle is going to lead us through. So without further delay, here we go. Here's Michelle.
Thank you, Nicole, for such a beautiful introduction. And good morning, good evening, everyone, depending on where you are in the world. So I'm holding in my body this sort of buzzy sensation of just having heard from Robert, who received some news about he has a family member that's in a bit of crisis, and so he won't actually. He knows we're here. He's connected to us, and he won't be on screen this morning. He will, we just discussed, he will listen to the recording, and then we will have a discussion and add that to the replay. So in some ways, and in more ways than that, he will be a part of our time today, as well as return for another live engagement, since he isn't able to be here, and he's very sorry about that. The first thing I'd love to do, and I do this at the beginning of almost whenever I teach, is that really, as an osteopath, I've come to see that the heart organizes all of our physical and subtle anatomy and pretty much activates and potentizes any practice that we may be embarking on. And in this moment, holding as I am, thoughts of intention for healing and support for Robert and his family, I'd love us all to come into our hearts and hold an intention for the highest good for him and the world and ourselves as well. I'm waiting just to feel that I've actually arrived here and can feel all of you and him and his family and my body and the ground. Bringing a bit of an inner smile of calm. Simply to arrive here in present time and space, in our ability to deeply connect with ourselves and one another and the frequency of love. I feel much more oriented now to really enjoying this time together. I feel that every time we meet and every time I show up in the world, and for myself, really what I'm doing is devotion. It's like an offering of wisdom, love, intelligence, sharing. That's my purpose. And so it's that what I just named is very, very relevant to this concept of full body breathing, because full body breathing is our aliveness, our connectedness, that place where we actually drop in such that our spirit is very intimately connected with the physical. And this is very literal, right? The electricity of our consciousness infusing itself into our physical bodies, potentizing, activating all of our metabolism. And I'm naming how I define state of flow, which is the state that really powerfully supports healing, awareness, the ability to connect, the ability to be in service in the world in a meaningful way, the ability to be in a loving orientation towards ourselves and one another, where our creativity and gifts are really accessible, as well as our guidance and intuition. So today we're beginning full body breathing in our hearts. So the arc of our time today is that I'm going to actually share a little bit. I had the inspiration to share a little bit from Robert's book that he's working on that has not been published. Everything that I read now are a little bit of a preview from his work that will be published in March. And then I'm going to take us into I might actually do a little bit of an academic exploration of the osteopathic view of full body breathing. There's a lot of beautiful anatomy and some physiology to touch into, and then we'll do it. We'll actually sit and invoke full body breathing in our seats, because I actually have accomplished that I'm able to remain in this full body breathing state most of the time. I can feel the difference when I'm in, when I'm not in. On the heels of going through this practice together, we will all be more in and hopefully have a very palpable experience of that location and state, so that we begin to remember this native original way and be able to access it and invoke it in every moment of our busy stressful days, whether we're in the forest or in our office or in our car commuting, we actually have the ability to access a lot of power, support, intelligence, and healing in every moment. Okay. Connecting again into our hearts. That was a lot of words. And then down and through our feet into the ground. Noticing really if you can feel the ground. There's a difference between the left and the right. And then how does that connection reflect all the way up to your connection to the sky? It's one circuit, right? We're going to begin to cultivate and potentize that circuit as we move through our time together. All right. And I'm going to speak the words of Robert's introduction as an extension of the resonant state I'm now touching into, having named it with you. Okay, and feeling your breath. Can you feel it? Regardless of what it's doing, noticing what is it doing with no judgment. Okay. All right, a poem by Robert Litman. For the love of breath. Oh, for the love of breath that travels tenderly through the interior of my body. Like a breeze that stirs the leaves of a tree. Oh, for the love of breath that delivers me into an intimate relationship with my experience, inviting the body and breath to move as one. Oh, for the love of breath that is consciously revealing the many possible pleasures that are embedded in the movement of breath. Kindness, softness, flow, aliveness, ease, and love. Oh, for the love of breath that reminds me to be grateful for the gift of life, birthing me again and again with each new breath. This book is dedicated to breath. Breath never lies to me and always holds me accountable. I bow in gratitude for its invitations to rediscover the heart of innocence and beauty. I'm having a little tears of gratitude, so beautiful. So I'll tell you why I invited Robert today. Nicole named that he taught alongside Emily Conrad, the founder of Continuum Movement. And Robert, so I affectionately and somewhat clumsily call Continuum Practice self-osteopathy. It's not very elegant, but it's a very descriptive word. And Robert is so, he really holds the awareness and the consciousness, the rare awareness and consciousness, although we all are born experts in everything I'm going to talk about today. The remembering that comes through the wisdom of continuum practice is really a full body breathing, surrendering to the forces of nature, such that our subtle bodies are so intimately and deeply infused into our structure that there's no separation, right? The last webinar, the 2 webinars ago, we talked about osteopathy and non-duality, no separation between the subtle and physical. The separation is somewhat imaginary. And what it is that happens when we're squarely planted in our bodies, existing in our bodies, integrated, and our consciousness fully integrated into our bodies, is an activation of the physiology so potently and so literally, such that you can even see color changing in your skin and heat and pulsing and tingling as the waking up of the physical structure occurs, as it will hopefully today for us in our practice of full body breathing. It may be beginning now. A sense of the thawing that comes with arriving with our awareness in our tissues. And how this connects to Buteyko breathing is the naming of this efficiency state, where the breathing actually comes from the cellular level. This activation from our subtle bodies being really deeply, intimately connected with our physical structure creates this measurable piezoelectric effect in the cells, like static cling on a sock, expands the cell, brings coherence into the fluids of the cell, activates cellular machinery, metabolism, and it's as though the oxygen is pulled in and done, the work of breathing done by every cell in the body. So I began my talk about Buteyko. I'm naming the same thing from many different directions. Lao Tzu said the perfect person breathes as if he is not breathing. And we're going to talk a little bit also about the work of Konstantin Buteyko, the Russian doctor and researcher who studied thousands of patients, millions of bits of data to hone in on what is it that's actually, what actually supports this deeply restorative breath state. And he ultimately named that physiologic breathing, coherent breathing, breathing in alignment and synchrony with the planet and the forces of nature. Those are my words, not his. He described the physiologic state of this deeply connected breath in numbers, and then he began to explore it spiritually in his own consciousness practice, meditative practice, such that he was ultimately able, after being having such profound breath dysfunction, hyperventilation, profound dissociation between his physical and subtle bodies, to where he was given 1 year to live, the prognosis of 1 year to live in his 20s, I believe, late 20s, as a physician, working too hard, not paying attention to himself, to breathing, needing to breathe only 3 times per minute and needing to sleep only 2 hours a night, because he was able to drop in to this deeply surrendered receiving state where his body was literally doing the breathing for him. I just took a breath through my mouth. That means I'm excited. A little activated. I can feel my heart. I get very excited, and and I also have some breathing dysfunctions. Most of us do. So a lot of just airway, passage of air, a lot of the mechanical bits of that are things we cover in the course, because there are ways that modern life has affected our structure, and conditioned our physiology and our baseline states such that dropping into the native resting state that would truly support healing is a little bit of a reach for most of us. So, right, my course is all about looking at all those little pieces and reeling them back in. They're all relevant, right? We talk about the heart as a component of this full body breath. We talk about hydration as a component of this full body breath. Tongue function, we'll look at most of these today together. So, this primary idea that it's our attention rooting into our cells, remaining aware of every cell, imagining in this moment, holding the awareness of each cell in your body and noticing what that invokes in your experience. I immediately have a reaction, right? Because I'm very used to this practice. I did not start out being able to feel any of this or much of anything. Having many of us, including Robert and we also have the meeting of all the early life burdens, traumas, compressions, density that drove us to be seekers of this freedom that we're naming and shouting to the world from the rooftops. The even possibly slightly uncomfortable experience of what it's like to expand your awareness and hold a sense of connection to every cell in your body. I started feeling release coming through my midline, right at my diaphragm, and a little bit of buzzing on the right side of my body. Right side of my body might be thawing a little bit. It's quite literal, like your foot coming back from being asleep. And then as I'm summarizing, and then we're going to do an actual step-by-step practice. As the attention connects in, there's actually an activation, right? Energy follows attention and intention. So as we come in, noticing how the fluids actually activate, right? There's actually an electrical response. I would say the energy of our consciousness, our spirit comes in through our, directed by our attention and intention, changes the electrical state in our bodies. And then we have a coherent response where the fluids in our body start to become laminar, like swells in the ocean, deep ocean swells, wave motion, versus turbulent, like the seawater breaking on the shore. Very, right? We're honing in on coherence. Deep coherence is what allowed Dr. Buteyko to sleep 2 hours a night and need only 3 breaths per minute. Deep resonant connection with the planet, such that the entire sphere of, connectedness to all that is really begins to support the body and the work of living and breathing and being. Oof. And in osteopathy, we name this response fluid drive, right? We reactivate, essentially refresh the connection between the subtle and physical bodies as we're beginning to venture into. And then we can actually feel how much, we can actually assess hydration status, because if there's a sluggy, draggy quality to the movement of current and fluids through the body, that is a sign that we're underhydrated, which most of us are, because hydration is really a function of coherence, not just the number of water molecules in the body. Very lovely. Okay. So It's tuning back in. We're going to go step by step through some of the things. I think I'll list them in the video below when we're complete, because these can be accessed beautifully, easily, pleasurably in every moment of our day, especially when we're commuting or at our desks. I maintain that we can actually not only mitigate the negatives of sitting, but access this time to heal our bodies and wake up. So, establishing the central axis, our connection below and our connection above, as though we're logging on to poles, powerful poles of support and connection. Feeling your feet root into the ground. I'm feeling more through the left side. So again, that correlates my body buzzing on the right prior, because there's a little bit of thawing needing to happen to create a full circuit through the right body channel. Just noticing, no fixing. This is a receiving time. We're simply becoming present, arriving fully in present time and space, and receiving the power of that. And then extending from perhaps visualizing some roots moving into the earth. Maybe it's a beam of light or a cable. Whatever it is that actually reflects a response. Your body will give you a affirmative, or this is one of the ways we actually can tap into our guidance and allow the body to choose, right? We're not doing what we think we should do. We're letting the body guide us. It's far more intelligent, by the way. Really deepening that sense of connection with the earth, sense of gravity meeting you. It may really help to begin to sense this current circuit activating through the midline, to sit in a way where your weight might be more on your thighs, to free up your midline, right? Rolling to the front of your sit bones, perhaps filling in if there's a dip in your seat that your hips are lower than your knees, filling in that space so you can begin to roll around on your seat like a ball bearing. This is a little bit of a blend of continuum cues and osteopathic cues, and of course, Vedic yoga. I source a lot, correlations in the different disciplines, influences from Vedic teachings. We're all naming the same thing. Not rocket science. We're born experts in all of it. And then noticing if you can sense the connectivity through the center of the body, reaching out through the crown of the head toward the sky, effortlessly lengthening, perhaps tucking your chin slightly, resting your tongue effortlessly across the roof of your mouth wherever it is easy, not necessarily the academically correct position, but your position of most ease in this moment. Most ease often reflects as least work in breathing. Feeling into that. Then moving up, noticing, and perhaps noticing a bit of wave motion beginning to express through your body. It may be a little bit unwieldy and initially because as we begin to drop in, we're actually becoming less dense, more fluid, and the body will spontaneously begin to unravel patterns, right? So we're not in steady state yet. We're in a beginning of reorganizing towards steady state. So my body's I'm allowing it to move as it wishes. If you don't have movement yet, one of the things that we name is a phrase, roughing it in which you may begin to invoke a wave and then see if it can take off on its own. Right? Most of the time we're breathing. We may start with breathing or humming or wave motion simply to ignite this thawing process and then land in ultimately a place where we're surrendered to being breathed, being sounded, being moved, waved. As I'm naming words, I'm feeling them hum through. I can't hear you, so you could invoke a bit of a hum if it feels your body's calling for that. And I want to name that I'm noticing I'm beginning to feel the resonance of my voice lower as my system begins to breathe open. Pretty amazing. And then the attention, the attending to the subtlety and the nuance supercharges everything. So we're really refining our senses to be able to be with very subtle, still, and ultimately most potent awarenesses. It's a little bit of an inverse and a paradox there. The subtlety is where the power is. I'm going to say that again. The subtlety is where the power is. Okay. More pieces of full body breathing to invoke on your commute or at your desk now and after this gathering time. I've named grounding. I've named connecting to the higher realm. I've named the tongue resting across the roof of the mouth. And now we're going to bring in an awareness of the pelvic floor, the pelvic diaphragm. And, you know, in yoga, we talk about the bandhas. There's actually we have the capacity to intentionally bring awareness, not clenching, but awareness, tone, activation to the pelvic floor. You might just notice a little bit of a tightening of your sphincters and then letting them release and feeling the amount of holding that feels really supportive, right? Every time I do something the body loves, I feel more electricity. Heat, pulsing, excitement could be an emotional response if you're not feeling your body so much, or simply a yes on some level. Some aspect of pleasure, which is one of the ways the body gives us its yes. And knowing that this integrity, awakeness, presence in the pelvic floor actually begins to hold power in the body, retain the potency that we're cultivating, so that it can continue to feed every cell in the body and contribute to the deepening of our full body breathing state. Moving up, noticing if the fleshy spine, which is the belly, the fleshy spine is connected, intimate with the bony spine. You can imagine, in a sense, that you're allowing the entire torso to express a somewhat of a serpent-like behavior. It's one, it's full, it's integral, powerful. You may even imagine yourself as a cobra rising from a basket as we cultivate this midline potency. Ooh. Sensing how it is different parts of the body respond to that. Noticing if you expand your awareness to include more of the space around you, if that brings some ease into the breath, into the organs, right? We're moving up now into the thoracic abdominal diaphragm, the main muscle of breathing, a secondary physical breath, which need work much less when we begin to activate the support of the other diaphragms of the body, of which there are many, including the one we just named, the pelvic floor. And knowing that as we breathe into this middle burner, named in Chinese medicine, Taoist philosophy, that we're releasing not only the diaphragm, but the spine here, the place, location where it's often very fixed in most of us habitual sitters and shallow breathers. And we're very intimate here with the kidneys, right? Kidney is the renal system. So I'm naming renal, adrenal, adrenaline. The awareness as named in Buteyko and also in other disciplines of allowing the breath to come through the posterior, noticing, are you allowing yourself to breathe through this posterior lower part of your rib cage behind you, such that this stress response mechanism, adrenaline reactivity zone, is massaged with each breath in each moment. So imagine now that you're standing in line at a bank and there's noise everywhere, and maybe you have a million things on your mind. Can you bring in awareness of whether or not this part of your body is participating and can yield just a little bit to receiving of the flow, the current that you may be invoking in that moment through your connection to the ground, your expanding of your awareness in the space, and your connection to the higher realm. And you may even come in and put your tongue across the roof of your mouth and then notice what it is that happens to your physical breath and your sense of calm and your sense of awakeness simultaneously, right? We're not just naming relaxing, we're naming resting in a really beautifully supported, powerful, resourced idol. And as we bring our awareness more expanded into the space around us, we're actually filling that space with our consciousness. This is measurable, and though we may feel to bring it in to hide and be less noticeable, and maybe that's one of the ways that we deal with chaos in the environment and noise, we're actually safer creating this buffer zone. And often many of us are really conditioned to pull back and reduce breathing and hide. That is a trauma response. That's the direction that the nervous system goes when we're feigning death for protection. And our entire culture is somewhat dormant and not breathing as a trauma response, as a reaction to a need for more safety and support. And so as I'm bringing us through this full body breathing, I'm naming how it is that we call in this support for ourselves in every moment. And that we create this, way of existing in resource so that we can actually provide for others, which is really what our souls are fed by most. Okay, I'm beginning to sense, because I'm practiced at this, a bit of a coupling of, or a bit of a coming into phase of the diaphragms in my body, including the floor of the brain, membranous sling, that mostly only osteopathy really understands the significance of. All right, there's another piece coming, feeling the expansion of that releasing of the middle burner, and now moving up and noticing, right? The steady breath is there's very little motion in the ribs ultimately when we land in steady state. And however, on our way there, the moving of the ribs, the releasing of the ribs from perhaps their somewhat stuck, contracted state begins to wake up the ventral vagal pathway, named in polyvagal theory. That is an activation of the aspect of our nervous system that renders us available for connection, period, right? This is the part of our nervous system that takes the sympathetic stress response and turns it into mobilization and play. We need to be moving free. We need to be free in the torso, in the chest, in order to access our mammalian biological imperative of being able to connect with ourselves, one another, and the planet, and function as in the context of a whole, right? We're tribal beings. Full body breathing has everything to do with reconnecting with our tribal nature and receiving, activating our ability to receive the support of the potency and intelligence in the field. Just in naming that, something very potent came in, and I felt this part of my face release. It's quite, we hold our stress tension in our mid-face, right? We do a lot of this releasing of the holding of the tension in the mid-face, and in this moment, you may let your jaws soften, noticing if there's a reflective effect of that release. I'm feeling some buzzing in the right side of my palate, and some radiating humming moving through my sinuses. Full body breathing as a treatment for sinus congestion. It's quite literal. There we go. And then our final, somewhat advanced move that we can explore as a bit of research is, as you tune into your breath, noticing the effect of allowing the jaws to release ever so slightly on the inhale, slight closing of the jaws on the exhale, maybe 1-2 millimeters, the resonant amount for you in this moment. The answer is always the resonant amount that heightens the yes and the joy in your body, the excitement, the electricity. There we go. And we'll cycle here for a minute, just enjoying where we are. I'm tracking a progression through our shared collective presence and noticing that we're not complete, but we're beginning to arrive in a sustainable, steady state that does not require full focus. For me, I begin at this point when I'm doing healings on myself or in the office to partition my attention. So we're going to be continuing to hum and heal, dissolve, thaw as we move into more discussion. Now, the invitation in every moment, no matter what you're doing, you're on your phone in the office, you have a computer, you have someone calling to you from another room, is can one or two circuits of your awareness remain connected to this unified sense of an integrated breath? It's possible to set it and forget it in a sense, right? You set it and then you touch into it periodically, like pushing a swing or a flywheel. Oh, it's still going, right? Establishing ourselves, our capacity to run this full body breathing behavior in the background at all times, which does require reactivation of neural pathways and meridians. I watch them expand and activate, imagining that every moment every second, imagine each moment that you remain connected to your full body, resting, breathing, that you're growing a new neuron, expanding a meridian, brightening the pathways. Your body doesn't know the difference between real and imagined. Okay. So, remaining where we are, and then beginning to branch out and complexify while maintaining our connection. I'm going to read some bits from Robert's book and then show a short video of full body breathing that is extraordinary. And then we'll have some question time. All right. Page 17. Breath communicates through sensation. I read that and that sentence encompasses everything I just said. Sensation, feeling, the feeling state of connecting your awareness to every cell in your body activates the breath. I'm sure we could come up with 10 ways to name what he just said. And he'll name some of what he meant for us later. Breath communicates through sensation. All right, here's another bit he said. So after asking what I need to learn, I observe the feeling and movement of the next breath, the temperature, texture, length, pace, rhythm, and steadiness. And each time I discover something new, something that sparks my creativity and love of beauty, or I'm reminded of something I've been overlooking that is calling for my attention. I stay in conversation with my breathable body all day long, inspired by the words of activist and scholar Angela Davis. You have to act as if it's possible to radically transform the world, and you have to do it all the time. Okay. I think, Nicole, it would be lovely to share our silent. It's actually quite a bit of loud French speaking because the video it's just so extraordinary. It's created by a Belgian osteopath, Roger Fiametti. And I'm going to say a few things while it's playing. Okay, so showing how the major neuroendocrine and vascular hubs of the body and also lymphatic run through the central axis. And as we arrive in this current through the midline, which is basically how the subtle body and physical body orient and organize to one another, we begin to see the diaphragms at work. We just saw the cranial functional diaphragm, the membranes of the skull, and then the thoracic outlet. Now we're looking at the abdominal diaphragm. Notice how he's illustrating, and now the pelvic diaphragm, illustrating the motion and how they ultimately synchronize in phase with one another. And then moving into, I extended this part. I hope it works. Oh, my assistant was just created this morning and it doesn't quite have the fluidness, but in any case, the idea is to impart that full body breathing is literal, it's structural, it's energetic, it is a function of the integration of the subtle body and the physical body. It is our native state, and it is accessible to us in every moment. I think we'll open for questions now.
Yeah, I think if you guys would like to put your questions in the Q&A box, that is one option, or you can raise your hand and I can allow you to speak your question to Michelle. I think Jaya, do you still have a question?
This is fascinating, and my question is, when you do like pulse reading or heart rate variability, how do you feel it's integrated with all the things that you're talking about, since you're talking about the heart center and how heart is involved with everything?
Did you Nicole, did you put her there? Well, my thesis study was actually on how it is that the effects of osteopathic treatment affect, I didn't know what heart rate variability was at the time. I was in a hospital and I had a grant to do an investigation because the effect of doing this coupling of the physical and subtle body, which is what osteopathy does, was kind of impressing my medical advisors. My MD advisor was like, what's happening? Let's measure it. So what I did was I had an untrained person compared with myself, bringing in awareness, consciousness, connecting to the ground, expanding the field. And ultimately what we noticed is that the heart rate variability was drastically elevated after treatment with a skilled operator such as myself. And I just heard a report of, I think we spoke about it in the last class, where another physician friend of mine said, we've been measuring, it's a study ongoing now at Touro University under Victor Nuno, one of my co-professors, and they're actually collecting more data on this association. It's very literal, it's very direct, and it's really fun if you have a heart math device or a ring or some way of tracking your heart rate variability, that you can use that technology, if it's fun, to begin to train yourself, begin to kind of bring a little bit of support and accountability to your practice of dropping into full body breathing, which is very, very heart connected. The minute we drop in, all the chakras light up. And the nervous system comes into regulation. And those two things happen simultaneously. That's what our physiology does.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for that wonderful question. Lots of yawns during this breathing. Is that common? Very common. It's a way the body begins to respond to the release. It's a parasympathetic response. It's your body dropping into releasing of stress, more into a regulated state. It's a way to reset too, right? If your breath mechanism was a little bit dormant, it's like a big breath or a yawn is kind of it's one of the ways the body predictably responds to release.
Let's see, we have another one from Aichili.
Hi, it's Michelle.
Thank you. Hi, Michelle.
Yes, thank you. I don't know exactly how to formulate the question, but I think there's something that came up to me into like speaking while being in this full body breathing state, and how like different ways of speaking would affect that rate of like expansion. I don't know if there's something like, especially when you're like in social settings or you're speaking publicly, that you need to speak like with a certain tone, with a certain rhythm. I was just curious if there is a study or any insight on how that could affect the connection between breathing and speaking. I don't know.
I love it. I wish I was planning to talk about something like this. So thank you. When we invoke full body breathing, we are coherent and we are a powerful signal, right? So commanding leaders are actually able to connect to this broader resonance and be felt powerfully by crowds of people. This is the way that we invoke influence and commanding presence, and hopefully for good, right? Because it's very powerful to tap into a field of coherence. You can hypnotize people. You can also harmonize and neutralize a room. If you walk in and you're in full body breathing in an expanded, conscious, coherent state, everyone's going to calm down. There's actually quite a bit of research on that. I think Shamini Jain named it in her recent book. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And thank you so much for this class. I'm so happy that I found you. It's just, one of those threads like of friends, and then found you on Facebook and have been following for a while, and then finally coming to a class, and it just feels really good. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to name the strongest signal in the room wins, right? So if you're powerfully expressed and you have a beautiful intention, hopefully, and your heart is open, there may be someone on the side of the room that's maybe got an ill intention or just incoherent, dissonant energy, emotions in their body, and they will yield to your dominant signal. So this is the way we're naming that full body breathing is actually a radical act of activism that contributes coherence to the collective field. And there's piles of research on this through the HeartMath Institute, and they're actually monitoring global coherence through sensors on different continents around the planet, monitoring, measuring exactly what we're naming. So it's really inspiring for us to realize how much power we really have to contribute something meaningful to the world.
Yeah, thank you. I think this piece of activism is really, really beautiful, because we always hear that to change the world, we need to change ourselves. And what an easiest way to change ourselves than to just pay attention to our breath, right?
I would say be breath and receive breath. It's this limitless well of holding and support and love, the way Robert named it. It's really like, it's just, there's just no way to feel lonely or in lack when we're connected this way. Yeah, thank you.
We have another question in the chat box, Michelle. Let's see. It's from Liz. She says, in relation to the question just asked, I sometimes notice that when I'm speaking to someone, I disconnect from my central channel. I somewhat stop breathing or breathe irregularly, and I often find it gives me lightheadedness and sometimes heart palpitations. This is a red flag that I am not connected. Can you speak about that?
Oh, this is like fun. Okay. Well, firstly, sometimes that's the way the body's saying, I don't actually want to be in this conversation, right? We have oh, I'm supposed to talk to this person, but your body will kind of pick your people and how you spend your time. And it may be too that you're just overstimulated and you need a little bit less, or this is what I've been doing lately. I've been opening up my attention and my listening, bringing my attention out and getting really curious about the person. Not so much like mentally processing the words, but really feeling into their essence and receiving the connection with this other person, if it feels good, right? Connecting with people, other mammals, is actually really essential for our well-being. We're wired that way, and we don't do it. We don't have what I call exquisite listening skills anymore, because the world's so loud and incoherent. Why would we? But we can begin to actually cultivate coherent exchange with people by being really present and really listening and coming into present time and space. And then you may notice the person actually beginning to settle and speak to what's actually really true and relevant in the moment versus a bunch of blah, 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 blah. So this is an invitation, in a sense, to come into a conversation. We'll do this in research throughout the day. Like, oh, this feels scattered. I don't really want to be in it. I'm going to close my midline and stop breathing. Or can I bring my attention out, expand my breath, ground, bring some coherence to the space, notice what's happening in this other person. They will feel it consciously or otherwise. It will begin to shift their system. And then notice if your body's like, oh, I want more of this. I'm going to cultivate a little bit more of a deep connection with this person and see where it goes. Or, oh, I'm actually opening to something that I either can't handle now. I don't want to do this research now. I'm not available for it, or for what, it just doesn't feel like something I want to do, right? So you're letting your body, will I go in the direction of opening and connecting? It's very powerful to bring your attention out, attention in. Well, okay. Attention in and attention out is our native state. We're holding awareness of all of it. If we're simply in, isolated, without connection, that's a sympathetic state, right? It's very much like an I alone. It's like tunnel vision in a panic attack. It's quite literal. And we're separate and we're terrified. We don't feel safe in that state. What we're talking about, full body breathing, and how I named the polyvagal theory, is we're cultivating our systems to rest in we, consciousness. I'm one of, I'm part of, we're all actually ultimately one. We actually literally are. I think that's been mapped out, mathematically proven. And so it's this experimenting with bringing your attention out. And, your mind might say that's not safe, but if your body begins to soften and expand and get a little excited, like, oh, I'm curious, then you keep doing it because it's an exploration, right? There's no right answer. There's let your body guide and begin to open your sphere and bring yourself back into your ability to be really curious about and, bold in exploring the world and adventures and creativity. And that's a lot of what we talk about in my training, this not really the word. It's the practicing of these expanded states in coherent holding so that we can start to venture out of our safety zone and begin to grow enough neurons so that when we're out in more dissonant, chaotic places, we can still hold our ground. So the point of the reason that it's a 13-week course is that it takes time to grow the neurons. We're actually intending to cultivate our physiology and neuroplastically change such that we can create the experience that we have in community and maintain it when we're out in the world, and then extend our ability and create more community, not just in the class, but go out and begin to create it in your family, in your workspace. And we're basically learning how to bring coherence to the world. And I also want to name one other thing, the pleasure aspect. We have, I don't know, stigma around the word pleasure. Oh, it's self-indulgent. Oh, it's whatever. Your body's response of like enjoyment and excitement is a very reliable guide. And it's also a massive activator of really supportive physiology, including nitric oxide. We go into all that science in my course. And Nicole, will you also share the ebook that I wrote? Because I kind of I think we named like a little bit more of an explanation and some diagrams of maybe my top 5 things that you're going to do when you're leave here today and you want to recall what we just did without listening to the whole hour. Okay, so thank you for that. These questions are making me really happy. Let's see. Okay.
We have a question from Mark. If we are doing this therapeutically for others, I have noticed this can be draining. How should one protect oneself or avoid overstimulated states?
Really, really, really. Do you want to? Oh, okay. I was thinking Mark might want to speak it. I love speaking, but that's okay. This is a wonderful question. I struggle with this because I'm an empath, like I imagine many of the people who resonated to sign up for this talk today. And I was withheld, like I was cloistered myself. I got small and I was not breathing a lot. And so I'm going to name again that the invoking of the full body breathing state is protective. It creates a force field, measurable. And that there was another part of your question. Yeah, and let your body really, really hone your ability to listen to your body's guidance on how much. Like I remember a teacher of mine once named, this question came up, and how do you not get knocked out or overwhelmed or drained by, and he said, sometimes, one of the 10 things he named was that one, treating that one patient too many, right? It's like your system gets to a point where it's kind of like, that's the right amount for now. Then you let it metabolize and integrate. And then maybe because you remained resonant and listening to your body's guidance, you restore yourself. You don't let yourself get to that drained state, and you continue to build your ability to radiate a powerful signal and fill that space around you. And then, restoring in resonant connection with others, animals, nature, community, places where you feel safe and can just relax and drink. And then no matter what, when we go out into the world, there will be things that challenge our ability, that challenge us. And I look at those things as, you know, it's like an obstacle course. Can I up level in the face of these challenges? I always look at challenges as opportunities to up level. The psychology of that is powerful. I hope that answers your question. If not, you can add another one. You want to read the next one?
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Okay, another question from Elizabeth. I just started meditating daily and noticed that my third eye hurts at the end. If this is stuck chi, how can I use full body breathing to release that energy to get clear? Thank you for this.
Fabulous question, because these are all so great. When we begin to run energy, our anatomy literally shifts from solid to fluid. It's thawing. I named it before. It's like your foot coming back from being asleep. We all know that's a mixed bag, right? It's like relief, but it's awkward, it's uncomfortable, it can be painful. And so basically, as you thaw, you're going to feel, I'm feeling a little bit all the time in a lot of places because I have old traumas and I'm always pushing the envelope and doing crazy things. And the thing I want to say to you is that frame it again, the psychology of it is, this is evidence of thawing, and I'm going to stay with it and be curious and open to allow the parts of the body, the breath that is fully, the parts of the body that are fully thawed, to support that part that's thawing. So in osteopathy, we name this principle that we invoke the power, the potency, and the intelligence of the whole breath to then reclaim the lost parts or the parts that are thawing that need support. So I think I would say there's no problem here. I would say you're on the right track. And of course, when you are meditating, to really pay attention to the mechanics so that you're not compressing your midline mechanically. Most people don't sit in a way that really supports central channel flow. And we go into all of that in the class too. So it's really, really like this kind of, we work with all kinds of different ergonomic ways that are all really in and of themselves really enjoyable and beautiful. It's all about finding that place where our body's just ecstatic, because then it's, well, that's just kind of how we could live if we wanted to.
Oh, so great. I wanted to put up the, the flyer for your course. It's starting next week. And I think we also wanted to offer a discount to those of you that are attending today. We can extend our $100 discount to you for attending this webinar. So if you have questions about that, you can email myself or Michelle. I popped a link to the course description in the chat box. And CIHS is really excited to host Michelle and go into a very deep dive in all of these topics, and really an exploration in how you can take care of yourself better, really going into that self-care with all of these principles of osteopathic medicine, yoga, Buteyko breathing, hydration, conscious movement will all be a part of it. So we are really looking forward to it. It looks like we have one more question and then we're kind of wrapping up. Oh, we just have a thank you so much. Thank you, Elizabeth. And please look forward to, we'll have Robert back in person for sure. So since we all have your contact information, you'll be on our list when that event happens. And yes, Michelle might even do like a short interview with him when he is ready. And if it works in the time frame, we will attach it to this recording. So Let's see if we have, oh good. No, thanks, Martha, and thanks, Elizabeth. We appreciate you being here. And like I said, if you're new to our community, please accept a warm welcome from both myself and Michelle and the CIHS community. We love hosting events like this that really help uplift us as a global community, right? Mind, body, spirit, research and education is our passion and our mission. So if you have any questions about the academic offerings of CIHS, again, I can put you in touch with some of our great professors. And yes, we look forward to sharing more with you all. Do you have anything else you'd like to add, Michelle?
I just figured out how I can type answers. Everyone was saying these beautiful things. I just figured out how to thank everyone for being here and your beautiful participation. I want to name that I think it's evidence of flow that these questions were just so perfect. I really just had a beautiful time and I'm feeling so grateful. And I'm feeling really good in my body. Like the days that we do class, honestly, those are my best days of the week. I almost called an emergency class because I had a rough day. I was like, I need the group. We can all do this all of the time. What a beautiful superpower to be able to tap into your native wisdom and knowing and gifts and skills and be able to provide those to your community with nourishment to yourself, right? Because we only can give as much as we receive. Full body breathing is about opening your receiving all the way so that you can give more.
That's an amazing place to end today. So thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you, everybody who's here. And we look forward to seeing you in Michelle's course and connecting with you soon.
And now we have Robert Litman. Welcome back, everyone, to Full Body Breathing with myself, Dr. Michelle Veneziano, and Robert Litman, breath instructor and now author. And he was not able to be with us in a few days ago, and here he is now. And we can launch right into breath communicates through sensation.
Hi, everyone. Just trying to hang on to the class yesterday that I watched when I had a chance, and I appreciate you indulging the fact that I couldn't be there, but my wife was in the hospital and I was bringing her home, and ironically, it's mostly the leftover vestiges of a hospital visit or pneumonia and having difficulty breathing. So very appropriate to be talking to you about breathing. So thank you. And it was nice to hear my book read by you, Michelle. It was very moving to me to have you read my book in pages that way. And it's just, whoa, I wrote a book and here it is. It's being read. How wonderful is that? All right, so a couple of things. I'm going to do a little meditation at the end, but right now I just wanted to answer a couple of questions. In Buteyko, there's two sayings that class begins with. In every class, and one is that you breathe through your mouth as often as you eat through your nose. Some people think it's absurd, some people think it's silly, but it is something to remember that Buteyko believed, and it's true. I have in the book are over 30 physiological processes that happen when you breathe through your nose that are definitely not possible when you breathe through your mouth. We know some of them: filtering, warming, humidifying, creating nitric oxide, but there are many more, and there are many on that list are osteopathic, about what happens to the skull and the brain, like you saw in the film, that happens when you breathe through your nose that you can't do when you breathe through your mouth. And the other is that you pace yourself so that you can breathe through your nose almost all the time. So when you're talking, it's real easy to outpace your breath. You get excited, you want to talk, and so you start to breathe through your mouth. You take a breath in through your mouth. Well, the physiological mechanism that's working is that nose breathing is balancing the sympathetics and the parasympathetics. When you open your mouth to breathe, you're sending a signal to the nervous system that there's some kind of reason to either be motivated or on alert. It's just like if a bear was to walk in your room, what the first thing you do would go, take a big breath in, and man, your sympathetics would be right on. You'd be in survival mode. you build that up as you talk a lot. Take breaths in, take breaths in. So what I'm demonstrating for you is pacing myself so that I can breathe through my nose all the time. So when I run out of air, I close my mouth. I turn my attention to that full body breathing Michelle described so beautifully and took us through so beautifully, and go. There it is in sensation. I don't have to spend a whole lot of time on it. I'm just now taking my attention, putting it on the breath, putting it on my body, and giving myself a moment to attend to me. So that when I come back and tend to you in my conversation and my talking, I'm ready to do that because I've been grounded in myself. And in that way, I stay regulated. And so it's not about grabbing a quick nose breath. It's really about taking the time to just feel your body moving with breath. The sensation that Michelle read out of my book, that your breath is sensation. And it's touching me. How do I know I'm breathing? Because the air is touching my touch receptors. I'm being touched by breath. That's the way I like to think about it. Because it's so beautiful to feel like, oh yeah, I'm being touched all the time. And there it is. Can I have that pleasure moment of this realizing my internal receptors are being touched through movement. And I want to ride that flow of the air as it comes in and as it goes out. It's a flow, it's a wave. So as I think about it that way, I'm tuning to the wave that's being created through my breath and body. And it just makes me smile. It's that inner smile Michelle mentioned. It's just like, yeah, what's going on out there is going on out there, but what's going on in here right now? Nice little waveform, just riding in and out. So I can stay regulated into my pleasure body and talk to you with the authority of experiencing what I'm talking to you about. Just like Michelle did. I love the way she took us through that meditation by closing her eyes and then speaking what she was discovering, because that's the best way. It's not intellectual, it's reality. So that's how I stay regulated in class. So I used to teach anatomy and physiology for 3 hours straight. And I'd come out wrung out after that. So I figured two things. One, to stay hydrated, and the other is to speak like this. So the other piece that I thought was really fascinating in how I have, as it says in my book, I came through a tremendously difficult and dysfunctional family and a lot of PTSD from my upbringing. And the PTSD basically is like, I'm deadening myself. I don't want to feel anything. I don't want to feel anything at all. I'm going to be immovable. I'm going to be impermeable. I won't allow anything to come into me. I am shielded off. Thank you very much. Leave me alone. And that's taken a lifetime to defrost, to kind of go, no, it's okay. Your life force is your feeling body. You need to know what you feel. Damasio put that in his book. An example of a man who was a dynamiter, and a spike went through his brain. He lost his emotional brain, and he went crazy because the emotional brain is the link that we have between our intellect and our body. So I wanted to feel. I wanted to love, because that's a feeling. So in this process of the full body breathing, what I started to pay attention to, I noticed a couple of things that I feel like are really primary in breathing. That we're in a primary relationship with our breath. We're in a primary relationship with gravity, the force of gravity pulling us to the earth. And we're in a primary relationship to the space that's in us and around us. We can't get away from those things. They're primary. So when I inhale, I'm filling the spaces. And when I exhale, I'm emptying the spaces. And when I empty the spaces, I get a little more weighted. I'm not as buoyant. I'm heavier. I can sense a heaviness. And I follow that exhale into the heaviness and see where I land physically on the thing that's underneath me. That's my ground. That's, even if it's a chair, it's representing the earth in that moment. It's holding me. So as I follow my exhale down and I feel where I land, I keep that awareness of that ground and that beauty of that ground in my awareness as I breathe in. And I notice then that I breathe in more easily because I've let some of the tensions just really settle into the ground, like a dog or a cat does when they lie on the floor and you come with a shovel and you can pick them up. They just release all their weight to the ground. And that just makes inhaling easier. So that's one way that I created security for myself, to be in relationship with my breath, to the earth body, to the space around me. That if I have those primary relationships engaged, I'm pretty much in my full body breathing. But there are places that just don't want to go to ground. They're used to being held. They're used to being defended. Places that you said, no, this is the protection you put on. We're staying, we're here. And usually those places send up sensations of tightness, sensations of protection, whatever that quality of protection is, feeling, an armoring, a solidness. So after I spend time engaging my relationship to ground and space, I notice what the last sensation is that comes into my awareness at the end of my exhale. Where in my body do I feel a sensation that is calling my attention? And so this time when I breathe in with the awareness of where that sensation is in my body. I give it breath to move with. Because if I'm protected, it's impermeable, it's not in movement. But when I put breath to it, oh, there's some movement there. Okay. And then I let that movement grow and descend with the exhale. So it can rest down as part of the rest of the body that's resting. I may go back and check that place, see if it needs more attention, because every time I give it breath or breathe with that place in my awareness, breath is life. I'm giving life to that area, an area that's been held dormant for so long. And if that feels better, then I wait and watch what's the next sensation that's being sent up. And so how I think about these sensations is this, that there's a mutual desire. This part that's sending up a sensation is just so desirous to come back to the whole of the body, the full body breathing. In the full body breathing, the whole of the body, we really desire you to come back because we can't be whole without you. So it works for both of us to meet and communicate again, and communicate through breath and movement, and sometimes sound. So I make the analogy or the metaphor, and I'm sure most people have had this experience when you were a child, of having a picture with all the numbers. And you go from 1 to 2 to 3 with your pencil or crayon, and go until the picture is revealed. And it's the same thing here. Each time you drop in and you find a sensation and you breathe with it, there's that dot. That's needing to be part of the drawing of me. And then the next one, and the next one, until eventually, like Michelle says, you reset, you drop in all the way. Michelle,
yeah, I wanted to comment on, so interesting, the language is so different, but we're so clearly naming the very same thing. In osteopathy, we name fulcrums, and in our mind and in the treating of ourselves and the body, we feel them connect and then dissolve, like connecting the dots until all of the different areas of tension and density basically flux into one substance, which is now, I'm recalling the fluidity of continuum, which I imagine Dr. Buteyko touched in on when he was doing his yogic practices, apparently integrating Buteyko with yoga, because we're really talking about activating the vital energy and allowing the electrical effect to literally shift the viscosity of the soma. I've actually
I love your language, and you also said it really beautiful. I was glad when you landed on it, that idea of the reset, is because when you really get down and connected all the dots, you're really not even paying attention to your breathing anymore. Your body's just breathing you, and you don't even have to think about it anymore. It's doing what it's regulated the way it wants to be regulated, and you're out of the picture. You can drift and float around the seas of you for other information if you like.
Oh, I love that. And I love that I could tell I actually had a challenging morning, and until this moment, maybe 30 seconds ago, I started to feel myself drop in. We've said enough words consciously with presence, and I'm seeing your face soften and smiles happen, and I'm feeling you more, and my body's feeling more like me.
Yeah, the only other thing that I wanted to talk about was, It's just something that I just really, I mean, it's a major part of my book, and that's the using 2 syllables from 5,000 years ago. It was part of the Radiance Sutras that Lauren Roach translated in his book called the Radiance Sutras. And it's the use of 2 syllables, not so much necessarily for any religious content, but the use of 2 syllables. One is sa, S-A, and the other is ha. And when I first learned them, they were sa and ha, and Lauren and I talked about it. He said, some people like ha and sa, but I'm going to teach it to you as ha, sa and ha, which is that when you are breathing in, you're thinking. So you're hearing it in your head. You're not making any sound. It's strictly a thought. You're thinking the syllable sa all the way through your breath. And you think it kindly and gently and easily. And when you breathe out, you think the syllable ha, while you let the breath leave you without any effort. Sa on the inhale and ha on the exhale. And when I'm teaching people this, just to get them to feel the difference, is go to the way you normally bring air into your body and put your hand on your chest. And feel the tension level of your chest when you breathe in. And try to take a big breath the way you normally do. You know, taking a breath. And see if your chest softens or tightens. For most people, not for everybody. Usually when they try to take a deep breath, they're pulling up and their chest gets tighter. But if you think sa when you breathe in, you'll notice there may be a little more elasticity in the ribs, that they move more freely. And if you try to take a big breath by thinking sa longer, just thinking it longer, you'll notice you get that bigger breath and there's not really much tension. And so in my world of movement and breath, most people have a breathing signature, a way they normally breathe, bring breath into their body, which is usually pulling it and pushing it in and out, which creates a little bit of resistance just when you do the activity of pulling. And that shape, that signature is based on your whole history of your entire life. So it's constantly replaying the same story over and over again. But with sa, your lungs are pulling the air more than your nose. That's my experience. So I'm letting the lungs direct the flow. And as a result, the pattern of breath is different. And it's quieter. And the ha is the same way. It's coming out without that resistance. And with that signal of the softening that happens with sa and ha is sending a signal to this autonomics that, oh, things are okay right now. We're expanding, we're allowing air in, we're feeding, we're nourishing, we're taking in nourishment. And so we can settle down and relax a little bit. And so that's the signal. But if we take a big breath in and tighten, that's a different signal. That's an activation signal. And that's not what we want to do when we want to rest. So when I had COVID, let me just finish this one thought. When I had COVID and I couldn't catch my breath, this was the thing that, okay, just breathe with sa and ha. I felt the air come in, my lungs took it in where they needed it. I wasn't breathless, and I just, what I did. That's what my wife is doing right now as she's recovering from pneumonia. Yeah.
I was touching my chest, and I actually took my own class through the checking of the motion, the quality of the motion, different parts of the rib cage. So I'm recalling that as a basic checking in and with the body. That's an integral part of the Buteyko method. And then this piece you added, I was practicing sa and ha maybe for 3 or 4 cycles and holding my chest. And then the very first time I thought sa as I inhaled, my perception of my breastbone is that it's actually more fluid. Immediately started stretching, expanding, almost breathing inside the bone. It's very subtle. I'm an osteopath, so I feel subtle things. I don't expect everyone watching to necessarily notice a dramatic difference, but it feels pretty dramatic to me.
Well, nice. Yeah, I find too that for me, it really feels like, oh, I'm inside my alveoli. I can feel my lungs opening as opposed to trying to pull them open. And it's
Ah,
such a different experience. I feel like
that's
they open
right.
from the inside out. Breathing's opening from the inside out.
Well, you just named something else on my list that to me, that's the feminine way, the surrendered, receptive way. And I was naming how the form of osteopathy that I practice is also very much surrendering to this very nature of response coming in, because the body becomes moldable. And I do move joints, I do, but I can, in the state of this surrendered meditative, it's like an entrainment, a trance of entrainment between the nervous system and the physical and the subtle body. It becomes so mutable. We change very quickly, elegantly, safely. We land in an integrated place on the heels of transformation versus having a bunch of, figuring out. Often the body will have to do, if you come in with a directing of the breath, directing of the treatment, and you say, oh, this shoulder's stuck, I'm going to move it. Well, that might not be what the body would have done if it softened and morphed into its own preferred steady state. Oftentimes it's not. I'm naming that I love how the way you describe, the way you work with Buteyko and Continuum is very parallel with how I think of osteopathy, of healing period, as a feel over formula process, ideally.
Yeah, and you used a word that really triggers my thought. It's like, if I think to myself, can I put myself in a receptive mode? How do you receive your own breathing? Can you be receptive? That just changes it. It immediately changes. I am now the vessel that is being moved by breath. I'm just perceptive that I'm being moved, and it changes the timing, it changes the tempo, the speed, the rhythm, everything changes. We are the vessel.
Thank you, Robert. That was so beautiful. I feel deeply shifted in my system. I feel that you contributed some pieces that will really be so beautifully complementary to where we began in the first part of this webinar. And I just want to know if there's anything you want to share with the audience as a takeaway. And of course, let us know a little bit more about the book that's coming out in March.
Well, yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure. I'm glad I could do this. I mean, I'm in this process of tending my wife as she practices all these skills, and I was so in the field of this workshop, and I took my wife into full body breathing. So we did that for a while, and I took her through a few things. She had up and go to the bathroom, and she came back and she said, "This is for the first time. I'm curious about what's really going on with me. I'm excited. I want to have 20 more years with you. This is fun." And I thought, wow, in the middle of the night, and it's just when you can breathe and you feel your body moving with breath, and you're in your life force being generated and created breath by breath and dying breath by breath. That's the gift. That's what we came in with. That's what we're going out with. So I think it's just a beautiful thing, as Michelle read in that poem in the beginning. So I was just really thrilled. Go ahead.
No, I'm just so delighted to receive, right on the heels of not really knowing what was happening with you or how your wife was doing, and to just feel you and have you sharing her awakening through even being connected to the field of us all gathering to share about these beautiful ideas. Because in this moment, I'm thinking, do the things we say even matter? Is it about that we get together and we're curious together and we connect and we get excited together? And that seems to be enough to invoke whatever it is we're needing. I'm feeling inspired, a little bit altered actually in this moment. You have that way about you, Robert, did you know?
Thank you. I thought it would be good to do this again today in the middle of all of this, because I need to do something creative. Caretaking, I've been caretaking all morning. Let's do something a little creative while she takes a nap. Here you are applying what you wrote about, and here it is helping your wife heal her pneumonia. So So validating the way that those kinds of things happen. So that book is coming out May 2nd. It's called The Breathable Body, Transforming Your World and Your Life one breath at a time, as we're discovering here. Drop into that reset in one breath and everything changes in perception.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. We will return. Take care.